The desert wind carried the smell of gunpowder and sunburnt sand. A woman in faded blue coveralls bent to pick a brass casing from the dust. Calm, steady, unseen, she wasn't supposed to be part of the training until one Marine, too proud for silence, made a mistake that would rewrite his story. The Nevada heat shimmered like liquid glass across the open range. Rows of Marines lay prone behind heavy rifles, their faces half hidden beneath boonie hats, sweat dripping down their necks. Every crack of gunfire echoed off the low hills, rolling like distant thunder. Lena Ward moved slowly behind the firing line, her gloved hands plucking warm brass from the gravel. The small casings clinked softly into her bucket, a quiet rhythm against the chaos. She had been invisible for months. A contracted range cleaner who spoke little, smiled politely, and worked until her shadow grew long. A voice called out, young and sharp, slicing through the dry air, "Ma'am, you might want to step back. This is live fire." Lena straightened, her pale hair tied back, her eyes cool under the brim of her cap. "Range is cold on this side," she replied evenly. The Marine who'd spoken, Sergeant Colt Matthews, lifted his head from behind a scope, early 30s, broad-shouldered, all confidence. His rifle gleamed under the sun, customized to perfection. He looked her over, then smirked. "Cold or not, brass lady, this isn't your lane." Lena didn't answer. She just turned, her bucket half full, and kept working. For the next hour she moved in silence, slow, deliberate, unbothered by the sting of heat or the sound of rounds. Cracking through air, she listened. She always listened. Matthews was trying to hit a 3,000-meter plate, a challenge the range. Instructors whispered about, but rarely attempted. His spotter, a younger corporal, kept calling wind shifts, left to right, 6 miles per hour, full value. Then came the gunfire, sharp, echoing, followed by a pause, then a curse. "Missed again," the spotter said softly, "low by 10 meters. Lena paused, glancing at the horizon, the distant shimmer of steel half swallowed by heat mirage. She saw the way the flags along the ridgeline bent one way, but the dust near the valley floor drifted another. A trick of the desert. She knew it too well. Matthews fired again. Missed again. The frustration in his voice carried across the range. "This wind's impossible. No one could hit that." Lena's bucket clattered softly as she set it down. Without looking at him, she said, "You're reading the Mirage wrong." That sentence, so casual, almost careless, turned every head behind the line. Matthews pushed himself up on one elbow, squinting. "Excuse me?" Lena stood 20 feet away, her boots dusted white, the desert sun bright in her pale eyes. "You're reading surface wind," she said. "But at 2 clicks out, the valley updraft's twisting it. You're compensating the wrong direction." A few Marines nearby snickered quietly. The spotter raised an eyebrow, amused. Matthew's smirk returned, defensive. "And you'd know that because you clean brass?" Lena didn't blink. "Because I've watched people miss for the same reason." The laughter died quickly. There was something in her tone, not arrogance, but certainty. Matthews stood, brushing dust from his uniform. He towered over her now, the patch on his shoulder catching the sun. "You think you could do better?" he asked. Lena met his stare without hesitation. "I think the land's already telling you what to do. You're just not listening." For a long second, no one spoke. The wind hissed through the sagebrush. Then Matthews chuckled, a short, sharp sound. "Tell you what, brass lady, since you're the desert whisperer, maybe you can show us all how it's done." He stepped closer, eyes flicking to the small brass casing that hung from a leather cord around her neck. He reached toward it. Curious. "What's that, your good luck charm?" Lena's hand closed around it before he could touch. The small shell was worn smooth from years of skin contact, something like that. she said quietly, but inside her, the desert blurred. Suddenly she was 25 again. Dust caked on her lips, lying prone on a rooftop in Helmand province. The sound of rotor blades thudding somewhere far away. Her spotter, Mason Keene, whispering wind calls with blood on his sleeve. Up 2 clicks. Left half, he'd said, his voice shaking but steady. Through her scope, she'd seen a flash of movement in a window 2 miles out. She'd taken the shot, and Mason, the man who gave her that brass, never made it home. The casing was not luck. It was memory. It was promise. When her vision cleared, she realized Matthews was still talking. "Tell you what," he said with a grin. "You hit that 4,000-meter plate, 1 shot, and I'll clean this whole range myself for a week. You miss, and I'll make sure your contract here disappears." The laughter from the other Marines was nervous now. The wind stilled. Lena simply nodded once. "Deal." The air grew heavy as words spread down the firing line. A few Marines paused their drills to watch. Matthews, still amused, gestured grandly toward his rifle. "Be my guest, brass lady." She stepped forward. Her movements were quiet, fluid, practiced. She knelt in the dirt and studied the weapon. The custom-built 408 Chaitak gleamed like something sacred. She adjusted the stock, then the bipod. Her fingertips moved with a reverence that caught even Matthews off guard. She lay prone, settling her cheek against the stock, her breathing slowing. The scope reflected the horizon, 4,000 meters of heat, dust, and shimmering mirage. The corporal spotter hesitated. "You, want me to call Win, ma'am?" Lena's voice was calm. "Yes, and call me Lena." Matthews folded his arms, smirking again. This should be good. Behind them, a senior instructor, an older master sergeant, stopped in his tracks. His eyes narrowed as he looked closer at the woman behind the rifle. Something about the way she aligned her body, the way she read the terrain. It was familiar. He whispered to himself, stunned. Holy hell. "That's Whisper Ward." The name rippled down the firing line like a secret past in church. Whisper Ward. One Marine muttered, "No way. Thought she retired." "Not retired," another whispered. "Disappeared." Matthews frowned, glancing between them. "Who the hell is Whisper Ward?" The master sergeant stepped forward, his voice low, steady. She was a Marine sniper, 3rd Recon. Had the longest confirmed shot out of Helmand province, 3,150 meters. "Only reason you don't know her name is because she didn't want you to." Matthews turned back toward Lena. She hadn't moved. Her breathing came slow and even, the kind of calm that only lived in people who'd already faced worse than failure. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small strip of cloth, a folded range flag, edges burned. She set it beside the rifle like a quiet ritual. The spotter swallowed hard. Winds shifting left to right. "Maybe 5 miles an hour at 1 click." Lena nodded slightly. Her right hand brushed the bolt. "Mirage is rising," she murmured. "So we're at 12 o'clock updraft. Hold 2 clicks high." "Half right." Matthews crossed his arms, uneasy now. He had challenged a ghost. The range went still. Even the wind seemed to wait. Lena exhaled and began the math in her head. At 4,000 meters, the bullet would be airborne for nearly 12 seconds. Earth's curvature, barometric pressure, spindrift, Coriolis effect. She accounted for all of it in the time it took most people to blink twice. She whispered, almost to herself, 0.9 mils wind, 4.8 elevation, range 4,012. "Target silhouette E," her spotter echoed, voice tight. Confirmed. Through the scope, the steel target shimmered, a ghost in the heat. Almost invisible. The world narrowed to 1 heartbeat. In her ear, the echoes of Helmand whispered back, Mason's voice. The steady breath before a shot that would change everything. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, deep, thunderous. Dust exploded backward in a pale halo. For a long moment, nothing. Then, faint and distant, a metallic ping rolled through the valley like the sound of a bell in a cathedral. Silence. Then, cheering, Matthews stood frozen, the disbelief painted clear across his face. "No! That's impossible. That's 4,000 meters." The spotter grinned, shaking his head. "Impact confirmed, Sergeant. Dead center. You can see the shimmer. Hit plate E. The other Marines erupted. Some shouted, some laughed. A few simply stared, awe replacing arrogance. Lena rolled to a sitting position, breathing evenly. She didn't smile. She just looked at the horizon. That far. Bright line where heat met sky, and nodded once, as if answering someone unseen. Matthews tried to find his words. Lucky shot. The master sergeant turned toward him, voice sharp as gravel. "Luck doesn't fly 12 seconds through crosswind." Lena stood, brushing dust from her knees. She reached for her bucket of brass again. "Your turn to clean the range." "Sergeant." The laughter that followed was quiet, respectful. Not mockery, but recognition. Word traveled faster than wind. By late afternoon, the base Gunny Harris, appeared in a cloud of dust. Sunglasses reflecting the dying sun, he walked with the slow authority of someone who'd seen too many ranges and too many boys with too much ego. "Which one of you geniuses challenged a legend?" He barked. Matthews stiffened. Gunny, it was a friendly bet." Harris looked past him to Lena, who stood quietly by her truck, loading brass buckets into the back. He tipped his head. "Ma'am, I thought you disappeared off the map." Lena smiled faintly. "Guess maps change?" He chuckled. "Still humble, huh?" "I read your debrief. That Helmand shot saved a convoy. You walked away from it like it was a grocery run." Her eyes drifted to the horizon again. "Didn't save everyone." The gunny's face softened. "None of us ever did," he said quietly. Then louder, turning to the Marines, "You all just got a master class. Learn from it." And Sergeant Matthews, "Yes, Gunny, you're on brass duty." The laughter this time was full and genuine. Even Matthews cracked a smile, shaking his head. As the sun bled into the horizon, Lena stayed behind. The others left in trucks, engines fading into distance. She stood alone on the empty range, her silhouette long against the amber dust. The wind had softened. No more mirage, no more distortion, just quiet. She walked to the firing line one last time and looked through the scope. The plate still glimmered faintly 4 kilometers away. A memory flickered. Mason's grin. "That same horizon in another desert, half a world away," she whispered, still listening. "Partner!" The echo of her voice vanished into the wind. She reached into her pocket and pulled out one casing, the round she'd fired that day. She looped it beside the older one around her neck. The brass glinted together, 2 memories fused into one. Then she turned, her boots crunching softly on the gravel. The desert swallowed her shape as she walked toward the fading light, not as the brass collector, not as the legend, but as what she'd always been, a whisper carried by the wind. Morning came pale and quiet. The range smelled of dew and burnt powder. Matthews arrived before anyone else, rifle slung over his shoulder, brass bucket in hand. He worked in silence, not out of humiliation but reflection. Each casing he picked up clinked softly, the same rhythm he'd once mocked. When the master sergeant passed by, he stopped and watched. "Didn't think you'd actually show up?" Matthews shrugged. "A deal's a deal." He paused, scanning the far ridge where the steel plate stood. Even from here, he could see the faint mark, the impact Lena had left. "Can't stop thinking about it," he said quietly. "She didn't even look like she was trying." The sergeant smiled faintly. "She wasn't trying to prove anything. That's the difference. You shoot to be seen. She shoots to remember. Matthews nodded slowly, the words landing deeper than he expected later that day. Gunny Harris found an envelope taped to his office door. His name was written in neat, even handwriting. Gunny Harris. Nothing else. He opened it. Unfolding a single sheet of lined paper, inside was a short note, the kind that said everything by saying little. Gunny, thank you for letting me ghost around your range. The desert still talks if you listen. Tell your boys to read the wind, not the pride. L. Ward. Below, her signature was something else, the small leather cord with one brass casing attached, the older of the two she wore, on its rim, faintly etched. M.K. Harris exhaled through his nose, heavy with memory. He'd known Mason Keene. He'd trained him years ago. He folded the letter carefully and locked it away in his desk, saying nothing to anyone. Some stories weren't meant for report logs weeks past. The desert rolled on, the same sun, the same dry wind, the same long shots echoing downrange. But something lingered. The younger Marines started watching Mirage more closely. They learned to read the shimmer, the flags, the smell of heat before a gust. They spoke less, listened more, and sometimes when the wind shifted sudden and sharp, someone would mutter, half-joking, "Whispers testing us." Matthews kept training, but he changed too. The loud swagger was gone. He spent more time behind the glass, more time in silence. One afternoon, as he sighted downrange, his spotter leaned over. "You good, Sarge? You've been staring through that scope for 5 minutes." Matthews smiled faintly, just listening. One night, during a long-range qualification, an officer passing through asked about a new call sign on the score sheet. He frowned at the name written in neat pen beside the top score. Whisper 2. "Who's this?" he asked. Matthews looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Just a Marine," he said simply. "Someone who learned from the desert." The officer raised an eyebrow, curious, but didn't press. As Matthews packed up, he caught the last light sinking behind the hills. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a figure in the distance. A woman walking the ridgeline. Hair pale against the dusk, he blinked. Gone. He smiled. "Still listening," he whispered. Months later, during a live fire exercise, the unit pushed the range boundary farther than ever before, 4,200 meters. No one had hit it yet. The wind was fierce that day, biting cold. Matthews lay prone, breathing steady. The air shimmered with dust and distance. He made his own calculations this time. No one whispering in his ear, no ghost to guide him. Just instinct, silence, and the feel of the desert. He remembered her words. "The land's already telling you what to do. You're just not listening." He adjusted a half-click right, exhaled. The rifle cracked. For 12 endless seconds, nothing. Then, ping, a single distant chime rolled through the valley. The spotter's jaw dropped. Direct hit. 4,200 meters. Matthews just nodded, lowering the rifle. He reached into his pocket and touched a small brass casing he carried now. Not as a charm, but as a reminder. Some ghosts didn't haunt. They guided. The desert never forgets. It holds every echo, the ones born from thunder, and the ones whispered by memory. Lena Ward disappeared again after that summer. No one knew where she went. Some said Montana. Others said nowhere at all, but sometimes, when the wind runs low and the horizon bends just right, the Marines on the range swear they hear a voice on the radio. "Calm and clear. Range 4,000. Wind 2 left. Hold half." And when the steel rings, they don't cheer. They just nod quietly, because they know who's still out there, somewhere between the dust and the sky. Whisper never left. She just became part of the wind.